This is a picture of my Sugar Shack operation. It's not operational right now as I am in between batches. What you can see are my storage barrels. I have 9 of them. Now we'll store the sap before I boil it down. Over here you'll see the wood that I put ahead. This is the wood I've put ahead for the sap. It's 2 rows and roughly 28 feet long if you consider the entire length. I've roughly used 5 cords so far for my first 2 batches. What you see is my boiling pan and my stove. I've got a top on the stove right now that I'll take off and put the boiling pan on. This is the boiling pan. It's roughly 3 feet by 4 feet. And over in this corner you can see I have a system to remove the completed sap. I built a stand so that I can pull the pan off the stove and put it on that stand. Normally that stand is right up against the stove, and then when the syrup is ready to come off, I just pull the whole thing off, put it on that, and then I end up draining it in through some filtering systems into some vats. I'm going to take the top off this stove now, and I will then put the pan on the stove. Before I put the pan on the stove, I'm also going to fix my gasket. Okay, I've taken the top off the stove, and what you can see is the firebox, and then it's a very narrow area where the flames will lick up to underneath the bottom of the pan before it goes up the chimney. That chimney is a stainless steel chimney. I used to use just regular chimney pipe, but it rotted out so quickly and I had to replace it every year. The stainless steel will last many, many years. It doesn't rot out. This stove was built by my father about 4 years ago. He welded it all together. It's an old oil tank, and then he lined it with grater blades, so it's very thick steel inside there. So you can see that. I'm going to put the top on, but before I do that, I have this gasket material that I put around the edge, and it keeps the smoke from coming up around the edge and getting into the syrup. Otherwise, you'd get a smoky flavor of the syrup. So that gasket, it's in pretty good shape right now. I'll leave that on. I'll probably get 2 more uses out of it before I have to replace that gasket. Now you see I have the pan on the stove, and I'll remove that stand out of the way so that I can get ready to put the loading tank in place. I want to show you the loading tank before I put it up on the stand. There's the stand for it. It's on wheels, and it allows me to move that whole thing around with the loading tank fully loaded in my area here. So this is my loading tank, and it will sit up on that stand. It'll use gravity to feed the sap into the pan. Now what I do is I put a filter in the top so that when I put sap in this loading tank, one more filter to get rid of any small particulate before it goes into the tank, and then from that tank it will drain into the pan up there on the stove. Now the other thing I've got is this device here, which is a control valve with a piece of plastic on the end of it, so it gives me some flexibility that I can move that whole mechanism around to get it to work into the pan, and I'm going to attach it to the spout, which also has a control valve on it as well. Right now it's shut off. Okay, so I've got that pipe all mounted up, so what you can see is I just use a couple hose clamps and this piece of plastic piping, which gives me some flexibility so I can move that in and out and around as I need to. And then this control valve here is what I use to actually manage the flow of the sap into the boiling pan once it starts to boil. I have no sap to boil right now, but once I do, I fill that up. That tank holds 55 gallons. Well, I'll probably put 50 gallons in it. And then I let it slowly drip. I can condense off about 10 gallons an hour with this system. So with that full tank, I can usually go 4.5, 5, maybe 5 hours before I have to refill it. So every 4 hours I come out and I fill it up, and I basically just take a sump pump and I will take sap from there and pump it up into that tank and then slowly condense it down, and then all I have to do is keep the fire going and keep the boil going. So this is my little sump pump. I keep it in a pail here just to keep it clean. When it's not in one of those barrels full of sap, I keep it in this little tank, this little pail here. And as you can see, it's I use one of these flexible hoses that can go 25 feet, so I can stretch the from any one of those barrels up to the top of the tank to fill it up. And then what I do is I made this little jig here where I put the hose in that slot there. Actually, I put it in from that side. And then that fits up on top here like this, like that. And the hose would be in there. And then I don't have to worry about the hose flying out. It just sits right in there really nice. I'll show you in a sec. So here you can see I've put the end of the hose in that little fitting that I've built. And it's just going to fit up on top like that. And then I can take the sump pump, stick it in one of those barrels, and it will slowly fill that up. It takes about 20 minutes to transfer 45 gallons from there into there.